My name is Marcia Robinson, and we are recording an oral history with Mr. and Mrs. Rohrkemper as part of the Sweet MUMories Oral History Project. This project marks the 50th anniversary of the Miami University of Middletown, Ohio campus. This interview is taking place on November 18th, 2016 at the Gardner-Harvey Library. Mr. and Mrs. Rohrkemper, do I have your consent to proceed with this interview?
Yes, you do.
Thank you. Would you mind telling us about your relationship with Miami University Middletown?
You want to start or want me to?
Sure. I was a member of the first graduating class across the street at Middletown High School. And so I matriculated across the street to Miami. And I would not have been able to go to college if it hadn't been for this campus, because I couldn't afford it. I would never have been able to go away and go to college. And I was fortunate enough to be hired as a part-time student secretary in the office, which enabled me to make about $220 a quarter, which is what tuition was in 1970. So that's how I got here.
And thank you. And you graduated from here.
Mm-hmm.
And what was your major?
Elementary education. Graduated in elementary education.
And where did that take you?
I ended up getting a master's degree, and spent 32 years in education. I ended up as an elementary principal in Cincinnati.
Wonderful. Mr. Rohrkemper.
Yes, well, I matriculated to the Miami University Middletown campus as a what was called non-traditional student. When I graduated from high school, I had attended another university unsuccessfully, and I ended up being drafted into the Marine Corps.
Draft number one.
And spent, you got me off track here.
Sorry, his draft number was one.
Yeah, but let me do that stuff, okay? So non-traditional student, and I came to Miami University, and I probably would not have continued my education had it not been for the availability to attend this campus, because economics was a main consideration. So I started here in 1970. I spent a year in Vietnam and 4 years in the Marine Corps, and I graduated in 1974. One interesting side note is I have an accounting degree, and at the time and still today, Miami is very renowned for its accounting program. When I went to register at the time, cell phones, internet was not available, so you had to register live and in person. So I went to the Oxford campus and I can't remember the building now I registered at, but I looked and it was packed. And, I'm thinking, oh man, I don't really want to spend all day here. And I looked and there was one line that was a short line, and it was the accounting program. So I said, well, I'll give it a shot. And it was one of the better decisions I've made, but probably not one of the best decision-making processes I've used.
Did you want to tell us how that degree served you for a career?
Yeah, I'm still leverage that degree today. I was in public accounting for about half of my career, and I had a firm that I started of my own that I had for 10 years with a partner. I, from there, went to a public company into a CFO position in Cincinnati. And from there, I went to a CEO position for a regional restaurant chain, Gold Star Chili. And I am officially retired today, but I'm probably as busy as I have ever been today, with a lot of different board involvements and involvements with nonprofit organizations.
I'd like to follow up with your community involvement, but I'd like to follow with the story of number one. We have a recording of a student recalling gathering in Verity Hall around the television and watching the draft numbers be pulled. You mentioned being number one. Could you tell us about the draft experience?
The draft experience, I obviously knew that I would be drafted. So when my lottery number was that low of a number, I actually went to the recruiter and said, if I'm going to serve, I would like to at least get as much as I can out of this. Meaning I would like to do something other than just be an infantry guy. So instead of a 2-year draft, I enlisted for 4 years, and I got training I was in the Marine Corps Air Wing and worked on F-4 Phantom jets, and I was an avionics technician. So I worked on a lot of the communications equipment that are in jet fighter aircraft, which was certainly different than my end career as an accountant.
If you don't mind, I'd like to talk about what the campus means to the community as far as a source of people to employ. Do either of you want to speak to the role of Miami in providing future employees for local businesses?
Well, as Teresa mentioned, I think there are a lot of folks in this community that would not have certainly have the capability of achieving a college education, but would not have an opportunity for that because of the economic requirement. So from that standpoint, I think it's a great program that a community like this can have. It just gives a lot of people that opportunity that would not possibly have it. With that being said, also it provides a more skilled workforce for the community that the campus is in.
Also in the 1970s, we have stories about women who are finding out that they can strike out and have careers of their own. It was an era of feminism on campus, especially according to the Chaos newspaper. Can you speak to that environment of feminism on campus since you went into leadership?
I do remember that. I remember taking a course called Contemporary Feminism and reading Betty Friedan. And as a matter of fact, when we first started dating, I told him, he opened the door for me, and I said, I'm perfectly capable of opening my own door. So several years later, I'm pregnant with groceries in my hands, and I have to ask him to open the door. That's when we finally decided, okay, you can help me open the door.
Point made.
Yeah.
So since we're talking about family, how did the two of you meet?
Oh, I can tell you that. I was the student secretary, and once a quarter, this guy would come up to the window to apply for his veterans benefits. And at the time, the secretary, her name was Phoebe Green. I worked for Phoebe Green, and every time he would leave, she'd say something to the effect of, see, you need to stop dating those losers and date that guy. He seems like a nice guy. And I will tell you that we had registration one night, and he came to, I was working registration, and he came to register, and of course we knew him because he always came to the window. And we played euchre downstairs in the little student center. There were candy machines and tables, little tiny place. And so we were acquainted, but then Phoebe invited him to go out with us and Dr. Beard. We went to some pizza place after registration. So Phoebe jumps up like as soon as we get there, and she says, oh, I forgot, my husband's supposed to call me. He was in the service. He's supposed to call me, Mike, can you take Teresa home? And then as she's leaving, she whispers in my ear, I will be a bridesmaid. And she was. That's how this got started.
And you were okay with this idea?
He didn't know.
Oh, I knew nothing about those conversations, yeah, but it certainly worked out well for both of us.
That's a wonderful story. Can you talk more about life for students while here? Any professors that you would like to recall? any moments that particularly shaped your career trajectory besides standing in the short line at registration?
Well, yeah, I can start with that. I found it being the non-traditional student, and sometimes I kind of think, well, I don't know why that term is, referenced, because a student's a student. But I will say this: when I got out of the service, I was a serious student. I had never been a serious student before. In high school, I did what I needed to get by, and certainly did okay. But when I was in the Marine Corps, I really came out with much more of a discipline and a real drive, I'll say, to accomplish something. So when I came to Miami University Middletown, I was a student number one, and the social part was fine, but student number one. And I think a lot of the faculty recognized that, and I think a lot of the faculty also recognized the fact that a lot of veterans weren't treated, really well. The Vietnam War was not a popular war, and I always felt very welcomed by the faculty, and I always very encouraged by the faculty. And I can still remember, Dr. Lehman was a Western Civ individual. Mike Broida he was on the Oxford campus, but I had to take 9 hours of statistics for my accounting degree, and very difficult class, and he was very encouraging. And he talked me into taking a graduate level class after I took my my minimum requirements. I'll never forget the first day of class. There were 13 students in the class, me and 12 math majors. So I kind of looked at him, and he looked at me, but it was fine. I'm just glad I took that one, credit, no credit. But it was, and I think I was always challenged by the faculty in that way, just to try to push a little harder and do a little better. But, I had academic success here that I'd never had. I had I spent 1 year at Ohio University and, unsuccessful, and I think I started here at Miami with about a 1.2 ACUM, and I graduated with a 3.6, so, I got serious here.
Teresa, do you want to recall any professors or any special moments that shaped your career?
I also had, was it Dr. Lehman or Mr. Lehman for Western Civ? I had that class, and he kind of opened my eyes to history. He was really good. But I also remember that there was a core group of students in elementary education. I want to say maybe 12, 15 of us. And even though we didn't live on campus, we became cohesive. We became a group, and we studied together when we met. And, we still formed a unit, and we had the same goals in mind. So I do remember having a relationship with that. It was the same group of people, of course, and that was nice.
Were there any special classes or anything that the group was able to put together?
Well, because I worked in the office, many times there would be a class and they weren't going to offer it on campus, or it was coinciding with another class that we had to take. So we would petition. I would bring in a petition, and we would petition to get that class offered maybe in the summer. And I would just take it into class, and 15 people would sign it, and we'd send it over to main campus, and somebody would come in the summer and do our class. I bet I did that 4 times. And that's really what kept me here, and I didn't really have to commute. Now, I did have to commute for the student teaching, the pre and post, and a couple of other classes, but mostly I was here because I brought them to me.
For both of you, can you speak to what it might have meant to the parents in the community to know that a college was coming here? I don't know if you recall any conversations, or if you were paying attention at the time that the university was planned. But what difference did it make to families to know that their kids could go to school nearby? You began to speak to this, but I'd like to talk about parents. if you can recall?
I knew that I wanted to be a teacher in second grade at Maple Park Elementary, which doesn't even exist anymore. I had a second grade teacher, and I knew that I wanted to be a teacher. I had no idea how I was going to do that. And when I told my parents I was going to start taking classes here, and I think the school was only 5 years old or something in '70. I don't know when it wasn't very old.
1966.
1966, yeah, so 4. And at first, my parents thought that was crazy. Get a job at Armco so you can buy a car. That's what my dad told me. And then I overheard him a couple years later talking to some people, some friends of his, and he said, yeah, my daughter's in college. She's in college. She's going to be a teacher. So at first, I think they thought it was kind of silly, but then I know that they were very proud.
And you were probably the first college graduate in your family too, I would think.
Not in a big family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did that mean to the extended family?
I think they were impressed. I think they were impressed. Yeah. I mean, who knew? Nobody expected it, and I knew what I wanted to do, and I was going to figure out a way to do it. And thank God this place was here, so I could.
The committee that planned this campus envisioned a university that not only provided opportunity to the children of the community, but they also wanted a university that gave back to the community. Were there any events that happened during your time here as a student where you could say, yes, this campus had an event that helped the community, or since then? Any events you can think of?
You know, they had some concerts. Yeah, I mean, they had some concerts with some, at the time, you know, fairly big name musicians. And I can't even recall Johnny Winters, you know, for all the older folks that are going to see this tape.
Country Joe without the fish.
Which, you know, was pretty big for Middletown.
That was huge. It was
time.
right after Woodstock. A couple of years after Woodstock, I think. That was huge.
Now, is that the MUMstock event? Or
MUMstock.
MUMstock. Can you speak to that?
Oh my goodness.
That was the unofficial term for it.
That was
Yeah.
great. Yeah, that was great. Were you
Well,
there? I was there.
like Teresa said, it was around the Woodstock time. It was after Woodstock, but not long after. I don't remember when
And
Woodstock took
it was
place.
right beside the library. I mean, it was right in the yard. It was right here, outside. Yeah.
So, well, you know, thousands of people attending.
Yeah.
And the unofficial name for it was MUMstock.
Pretty sure we thought we were pretty cool then.
That's what I've heard. But you said MUMfest.
MUMstock. It was MUMstock.
MUMstock, okay.
Yeah. We had a little sorority too, not an official sorority. A little sorority, and there were a group of girls. It was called Sigma Epsilon Chi or something. And I remember we would have parties in the White House. Verity Lodge. We would have dances and parties. And one time we hired Bob Shreve, who was that late night crazy guy who did the movies, to just walk around. I mean, it was fun. We had fun things.
I heard there used to be outdoor movies and symphony concerts, things
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Yeah, there were symphony concerts, certainly.
Yeah.
I don't recall the outdoor movies, but I'm sure they were
Yep.
they were there. Yeah.
Some people talk about a group called Rusty Nails. Other people talk about taking trips through the college. Did you participate in any of those?
Trips through here.
Mm-hmm.
The main trip I remember is, it wasn't here, but it was on main campus, the McGuffey Lab School. Going through the McGuffey Lab School as an education major. Oh my goodness. And you had two-way mirrors, two-way windows, and watching the kids interact, and that was probably during my student teaching time, but boy, was that impressive. I remember that.
You know, this is a little bit out of context, but one thing I wanted to make sure, a point to get across when you talk about what this campus meant to the community. I think that one of the unique things about this campus that was really important is that, you know, there are a lot of very, very small universities out there and colleges, but for one to have the quality that this had, you know, having the association with the parent, the Miami University in Oxford, I just think the level of quality would be unsurpassed for a small community college, independent community college.
I agree. I think I got a pretty fine education here.
As we go through this interview, were there any opportunities you had for co-ops or internships? You mentioned student teaching, that's required.
Mm-hmm.
But could you talk about the accountancy program?
You know, there were internships that were available. I did not participate in internships because I really had a timetable that I was on. You know, I started a little later, so I was ready to make it through and get out into the job world. So there certainly were internships available. I did not participate for that reason. And I don't think they had the focus on the internships then that they have today. I think internships are very beneficial, and you know, I'd certainly encourage any student today to participate. But I did not, but I know that there were some available.
Are there any other evolutions of academic programs that you've seen here between then and now, or that you've heard of?
I know that there's and I'm going to probably not describe the program. There's a law enforcement related criminal justice program that, you know, I've read about and heard about, and when I was here for the graduation ceremony, I know I talked to a few students that were criminal justice majors. And it sounds like that's been a very robust program that's been successful.
Can you speak to the graduation ceremony? What did both of you see that day?
Well, I was a little surprised. I mean, I was honored to be invited to do it. You know, I'm not a high-profile person, so I was very honored that I was asked to do that. And Dr. Pratt, who I have known for a long time, asked me to do it. And it was a far larger, more energy kind of an event that I anticipated. It was very rewarding for me to do it. I was honored to do it, and you know, I kind of stretched myself a little bit doing that, but I thought it was great. And you know, I think there were 3,000 people here. So.
What did you see on the faces of the students and on the families?
Pride.
Could you speak to that?
Pride. A great sense of pride. I was really impressed. I was really impressed with the professionalism and, you know, I mean, it was a well-oiled machine. That whole program was great. And of course, the keynote speaker was fab. He did a great job.
And you know, I think I was able to communicate some things to the students that they may or may not have heard before. You know, once you get your degree, you know, you're just getting started at that point. You've accomplished a lot, and you need to be satisfied and happy with your performance. But there's a lot of personal skills that need to be developed, a lot of things that you can't really teach necessarily. And then, you know, I was just happy that I could communicate some real world kinds of experiences to the students, because that's, you know, that resonates, I think.
From your time at MUM, what are some of the values that you've cherished that you hope continue in the next 50 years?
You know, one thing that I think I didn't appreciate at the time as much as I do now is the liberal arts aspects of the education that you get here. I mean, you know, I think you need to get an education that allows you to provide a life for yourself and your family, and certainly I was able to do that. But some of those other courses I took, you know, I took a philosophy course and I took a Western Civ course and you know, some other electives that, you know, if I had it to do all over, I may have done a little more of that. And I do have a good friend who is a president of a university in Cincinnati, not one of the major ones, but who really convinced me of that, the importance of that liberal arts aspect of an education. And maybe, I don't know if today's students really recognize that. I mean, I think it's, what do I need to do to get a job? That's important. But I think the liberal arts learning aspects are of, quite frankly, equal importance, because that's, you know, where character comes from and a lot of other personal attributes.
With our education program, were there any teachers who modeled certain behaviors? You mentioned your teacher in second grade, but was there anything about the education program here that you really could build on once you got into the workplace?
No one instructor stands out. I think there was a Mr. Ferris, and I don't know what he taught. I don't remember that. I do remember him. I remember hearing a lot of, you know, you can do all these things, you can make all these lesson plans that you want, but when you're in the classroom, it may not work. So you have to have something to fall back on in the event. So I think I learned to overplan. You can't run out of time. I mean, you can't run out of things to do with kids. And, you know, if one thing doesn't work, you have to go to a plan B. And I know that I got that here because we had to make so many lesson plans. And, you know, we didn't have kids to present them to. And then, you know, what do you do if the kids don't get that? You have to have an alternate idea. I think that was very helpful.
You mentioned the core group of people you went through school with as a cohort. Did you see anyone build lifelong friendships here, or what keeps you connected to this campus? Why do you keep coming back?
I really only built one lifelong friendship here, and he's right here.
Okay.
Well, you know, I think probably the thing that brings us back, the global thing, is the Miami University. You know, that's first of all. We're very, very proud of Miami University, being graduates of Miami University. Certainly the Middletown branch and the regional campuses, you know, allow other students to recognize that same level of accomplishment. So that's my primary appreciation for the regional campuses. That everybody, you know, can't go to Oxford primarily because of economics. But there are a lot of students that are certainly as capable as any student that goes to Oxford that attends these regional campuses.
Is there anything else that you want future researchers to know about the first 50 years or your 4 years here that you think they should pay attention to?
Well, I think the university could do, and maybe I'm stating this not in the most diplomatic way, I think the university should do a better job of promoting the quality of the education that you get at the regional campuses. I mean, I think it's kind of like, you know, Big Brother Oxford and Little Brother Hamilton, Middletown. And I do believe under the current regime, we've had the opportunity to meet the new president, and I know
think he's moving in that direction.
Yeah, and I think that's important. That's how you develop that sense of pride, I think.
I think he got a big kick out of the fact that we were a 40-year Miami merger. He liked that.
I think that's wonderful. Thank you. I think that's the questions that I have at the moment. Is there anything else you want to add that I've not addressed?
Just that I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't had the opportunity to go here. And I can't emphasize enough that I would not have gone to college. I was in high school across the street, and I met with a counselor. And I remember he said, well, you need to take business courses so that you can get a job as a secretary. And I said, but I don't want to be a secretary. I want to be a teacher. And he looked at me and he said, you can't afford to be a teacher. Well, I guess I proved him wrong. It just made me more determined. I know it's terrible.
The one thing too I would say about the regional campus that's important, and really it's not just the regional campus, it's the university, is when you go from high school to here, high school you're kind of just being, it's kind of a one-way street. Information is provided. Where here, there's way more opportunity for real interaction and to develop your real personality, I think, and I think that's important.
If you compare that to education, I think it's like being in a small school district as compared to a very large one where you can get lost. No one got lost here. Every student was known and every student counted. And I think that's important. And I think the small community that was created here, and I'm sure probably still is, makes every person feel important. I think you have to approach something like, especially if it's the first in the family, no one's really going to understand what you're doing at first. They're really going to think you're wasting your time. You just have to be focused and you have to believe in yourself. And you're going to get people who think that it's ridiculous what you're trying to accomplish. But my personal experience is I knew that once I had a college education, nobody would ever take that away. Once you have it, you have it. And I think that's something students need to know. It's not going to hurt you to test yourself, and there's nothing wrong with continuing and following what you start, because it's something that you'll always have accomplished, and no matter what else happens in your life, you're going to have that. And if it's successful for you, I went on to graduate school. I did postgraduate work. I loved school. That's why I stayed in it for so long. You just have to be driven, I think, and believe in yourself.
I might answer that a little bit differently. Our experiences were a bit different. I would say that the regional campuses might even have a bit of an advantage in a way, in that there's much more of a cross-section of people in a regional campus. At the main campus, and I'm nothing derogatory there, these are very, very good students right out of high school, go to the Oxford campus and make their way, where many of the students that come to the campus here are students that are individuals and students that have had far different life experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Single parent families, older people like myself who've been in the military. So I will say, when you blend all those people here, nobody thinks about those differences. we're all students, and it's kind of interesting. You just kind of stimulated that thought, but I feel very strongly about that. I'm sitting at a study table with, I'm 24 years old, and a freshman working with kids 18 right out of high school, but there's no real difference there. And the thing too is, I think there is always plenty of help available. And I couldn't even tell you when office hours were for the faculty when I was here. I'm sure they were a couple of hours a day, but I just know any time after a class is over, if you raise your hand and ask the professor, hey, I've got this issue, can you help me out? You're never going to get a no. So.
I remember one time, I worked in the office and I was taking geography, and it was Mr. Sink. And he came by the office. We had taken an exam that day, and he came by the office and he asked me one of the questions on the exam. And I answered, and he said, "Why didn't you put that down on your paper?" I said, oh, I don't know. And he goes, "All right, I'll give you that answer." And would that happen anywhere else? Probably not. I think he said, "I had a feeling you knew the answer." He said, "That's not what you wrote." He said, "I'll give you that answer anyway."
At the graduation, there was a student speaker also, and I don't remember her name now, but it was kind of an example of what I mentioned before. She was a single parent, and I don't know her age. Certainly older than a high school graduate, and she was a military person too. That's right.
That's right.
And I was just very impressed with her.
So this is a place where people are transformed.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. Probably more so than a main campus, quite frankly. I don't know if the main campus wants to hear that, but
We had a good experience here.
yeah.